Hello, dear friends. Already forgot my water. Hello, everybody. Mm, it's so good to see you. 2 weeks feels like such a good time and a long time to not do one of these. So yeah, the every other week schedule, though, is working out really well as far as all of the other things that I've been doing lately. Good morning, Fola. Oh, thank you for being here. Fola is going to be our moderator going forward on these live streams. So excited to have you, Fola. Okay, so before I get into like all the fun, like the literal love fest that we're gonna have for Capricorn Energy, um, I want to just run down the details of the new moon while I'm looking at the chart here. So it will take place on December 23rd. I do believe it's like early in the morning, like maybe 5 a.m., something like that, Eastern time. And when we have the new moon, it'll be at 1 degree 32 minutes of Capricorn. The new moon is always when the sun and moon are exactly at the same spot in the sky. And because they are, the sun's light drowns out the moon's light. And it's that one time in the month, in the every month lunar cycle that we have, where it's like our emotional selves that mostly drive us on the regular, it meets up with the core of who we are and the core of our divine light that we were coming to shine, the sun. And so our emotional body and kind of our higher self, higher intentions, who we were born to be, they come together on a new moon. And that's why they say, like, a seed is planted. A new moon can be described as a soul infusion of energy. So, like, even if you're not someone who normally identifies super heavily with Capricorn energy, I think you're about to. Um, a soul infusion of a new moon can be very powerful. And this one especially has some components that I'm not going to dive too deeply into the astrology. We're mostly just going to focus on kind of Capricorn energy and how to be super practical and like apply it. But while there's the full moon happening at 1 degree of Capricorn, there's also Venus at 16 degrees and Mercury at 21 degrees and Pluto at 27 degrees. So we actually have both luminaries, two of the personal planets, and one of the generational planets all in this Capricorn energy bubble, giving us something. I mean, there is absolutely a seed being planted in the collective in general. And because of that, each of us individually will download something. And for everybody, it'll look a little bit different. The other piece that's really, really making this extra powerful is that the Venus at 16 and Mercury at 21 are very in range and making a very supportive, harmonious trine onto Uranus at 15 of Taurus and the North Node at 10 of Taurus. So that conversation on shaking us up into our own divine individuality, like the unique soul that we were born to be. And that's Uranus. And the North Node, which is guiding our collective soul destiny, is currently in Taurus, has been since January, and will be until July of 2023. And all of that Taurus energy is having this very harmonious, very supportive conversation to the personal planets, Venus and Mercury, that are in Capricorn at the time of this Capricorn new moon on December 23rd. Those same personal planets are also having a conversation with both Neptune and Jupiter. Speaking of Jupiter, that is another piece that is greatly energizing this new moon. Jupiter is at 0 degrees 15 minutes of Aries, so on into Aries, which is a cardinal fire sign. And because the new moon is happening at 1 degrees of Capricorn, which is the cardinal sign before, we have that 90-degree angle is almost exact, not quite, within a degree, and they're making a square. And squares aren't, depends on who you ask. They're not bad. nothing in astrology is bad or good. It's all just energy and it's all just how we choose to navigate within that. But squares are notorious for stirring up the dust. They are notorious for like, all right, let's go. Let's make something happen. There's two different points of view in a square. There's this one that wants to go this way, and there's this one that wants to go this way. And honestly, they're both pretty happy if you just do something. Like just find some kind of something that satisfies some parts of both of these and let's move forward. So to have Jupiter at the very beginning of Aries and this Capricorn new moon, kind of like Aries being more the fiery spark of inspiration, like we just had Jupiter retrograding back into Pisces, where we were having like a soul infusion of how we fit into this collective, the all that we're all a part of. We've really sunk into that like, yes, we're all one, but the inner workings and the interconnections between me and you and them and me and like the inner workings of how we all share in this space is truly remarkable. We are truly all in this together. I feel like that's a really solid way to describe Jupiter and Pisces, is just a felt knowing and understanding of your influence, your actions, your choices, your energy. It ripples out into the all. We all end up merging into the same energy soup at the end of the day. And so we've become, thanks to this Jupiter popping back into Pisces, we've become once again really clear on choosing carefully what are those energetic impacts that you want to have. Like, what, when you spend time with someone and then you leave them, how do you want them to feel based on like the impact that you had? And we're going to get more into Capricorn here as far as goal orientation and like what is the point of having a goal. And I would put this in that category of like, when I spend time with someone and then I leave them, I have a goal of them feeling nurtured and heard and understood and possibly inspired to go with the next thing, right? Like energized and uplifted and excited. And that's my goal. And so I'm thinking about that goal when I'm interacting with people. I'm trying to come to it from a place of like, that really is my top priority. And then if I'm able to actually achieve that, that's great, but it's not my responsibility to like actually control how other people feel. So that's really like the difference between having a goal and needing to meet the goal. And I advocate for having a goal and I say scrap the idea of needing to meet it completely, because the goal is not the point. And all of this are things that we're going to get more into, but this conversation between Jupiter at the beginning of Aries back to the moon and the sun, this new moon soul infusion at the beginning of Capricorn, it feels like the Jupiter in Aries is this fiery charge that's coming forward of desire. Like, I want to do this in the world. And then it's also connected in a very, it's technically challenging. It's a challenging aspect. But one thing I've realized about Capricorn energy as I've tuned into it this week and over the last 6 weeks with what I'm going to tell you about what I've been doing, it's like, it's really fun to get to see yourself rise to a challenge. It's really, really fun to have a challenge and then watch yourself get there. So when I say that this Jupiter and new moon square is challenging, hear me when I say that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. What that does, that means that like this Aries fiery spark of desire that like really wants to exist in the world, it's coming through your soul, burning you from the inside out. You have to make it exist. Aries is good for that initial burst of energy, very powerful burst of energy. Capricorn is in it for the long haul. Capricorn is looking at the big picture, looking down the road 50 years to make sure that like, okay, like I get what you want to do, but like, how are we actually going to do that? And so this combo of Aries and Capricorn is so powerful. And the almost exact square between them is like this cardinal push of energy out into the collective to start the next thing. And that is not defined by anybody other than your internal soul. Your Aries energy coming from the core of who you are, who you were born to be, knows exactly what this desire is. And the rest of our time together, I really do want to focus into the Capricorn end, because it's like, you know what your desire is, and that Capricorn piece is like, okay, so how are you going to get there? Like, let's break it down into steps. Let's take this one goal and break it down into 10 milestones, and then break each milestone down into 100 steps. Like, let's figure it out. How are we going to do it? Let's make it exist. Let's bring it to life. Oh my God, it's exciting. It's so exciting to think about, like, what's coming on this December 23rd Capricorn new moon. So that's like the astrology, and the whole rest of what I'm going to talk about is just for fun, getting to talk about these last 6 weeks that I've had. Um, and like going into what, oh, yeah, like what is the purpose of having a goal? What is the point? And such a huge part of having a goal, I think, is like, what is your North Star? It's not necessarily about ever physically getting to the thing so much as it is like knowing how to orient yourself, knowing, like, you know, based on the Taurus North Node and Taurus Uranus, the Jupiter and Aries, like both of those are very, very powerfully giving us information about what direction is perfect for us. And then we can take that, we can take that, like, Jupiter new moon, need to make it happen, need to materialize our desires. And then you also have this like really supportive trine between Taurus and Capricorn. Again, like, how are we going to make it happen? How are we going to do this? And I want to, instead of like giving you my advice, which is basically worthless in your experience, I'm going to just tell you about my experience these last 6 weeks, kind of the last few months, and tell you a story of my own personal Capricorn energy. And to give you an idea, I have Neptune in Capricorn at 9 degrees in my ninth house, and I have my midheaven in Capricorn at 17 degrees in my, obviously creating my 10th house, the beginning of my 10th house. Um, so there is Neptune. There's a lot of my spiritual path that is tied up with setting really big goals and achieving them. And because of that, I have accomplished a lot in my life. And it is incredible to me how, like, you, on the natal chart wheel, you end up with this trine, but, or not trine, sorry, sextile between Pisces and Capricorn. So I have my midheaven at 17 degrees Capricorn, and I have my north node at 17 degrees of Pisces. They make an exact trine. And it is incredible to me how, as my spiritual journey opens up, it's feeding my Capricorn, my goals, my ability to set bigger goals and meet them even more effectively as I tap into my soul, as I live out my Pisces North Node, as I develop into trusting the universe, as I do all of this work with my energy. It opens me up to accomplish even more grand things in the earth realm, Capricorn, like reaching new mountaintops, reaching higher mountaintops, getting to the higher mountaintops faster. Like, it is incredible how Capricorn and Pisces go together, because I don't think you would ever like naturally connect them, but they are so intertwined and can be an extremely powerful combo, especially when you are tapped into like that Pisces side of, I am creating what I'm creating for the benefit of the all. We are all in this together. So I'm going to use my time and my resources, Capricorn, to invest in building things that will benefit not only myself, but everyone. And to, again, to example that, to demonstrate that, to give you an example, um, I own a grocery store. So that began back in 2016, technically. I left my corporate job and knew intuitively, wherever that stuff comes from, I knew that my business is ready for me. And I didn't know yet what my business was. I had no ideas whatsoever as far as what kind of business I wanted to do, but I did know that I am here to build a business and run it, and we'll see, right? Like, I had money and my plan was to live off my savings for a year. And because of that, I was just gonna like quit my job and open up this space and focus on having fun and see what unfolded, because I could really feel that my business is ready for me. So it felt very much like the field of dreams, that like if you build it, they will come. And so I quit my job with no plan and just this plan to like take off a year and see what happens. And 5 months later, 5 months of being intentionally unemployed, no income whatsoever, um, I got a call from my cousin and now business partner, and he wanted to know if I wanted to be 50-50 partners and open a grocery store in our hometown in Kansas. And in that instant, my entire body knew. I mean, it was such a hell yes moment. It like was just instantaneous, like absolutely. Like it was so clear. And I think that's Aries energy. That's like the clarity of that fire that like it's undeniable. Like you have to do it. You can't not do it. And so those are the things that you can't not do. Follow that and apply all of your other energy to seeing that those things exist, because it's like, why do you think you have the goals that you have? What do you think they're for? Like in the bigger picture, like if we were going to zoom out to like source energy's viewpoint, why do you think you have the goals that you have? The specific goals, the specific direction that you choose to apply yourself. You choose to work in the job you work in or apply yourself to support yourself however you are. Like what are your steps adding up to? How do you orient yourself? What's worth spending your time on? These are all Capricorn questions. And my main goal back like 6 years ago when I started on the first grocery store was I want creative freedom. That was like financial independence wasn't even on my radar. I want the ability to come up with an idea and execute it. Is that so hard? Can I please do that? Can I please have an idea and bring it to life? Like, please. I want to build my own business. I want to be my own boss. I want to be no distance between me having an idea and me giving myself approval to do the thing that I want to do. So creative freedom, that's definitely what I wanted. So when he approached me about the grocery store, it was like, that's what I want. I want creative freedom. He managed the money and I got to manage everything else. I got to decide everything else. I got to make like 4,000 decisions while we built that first grocery store. And it was the literal time of my life. It was like the most fun I've ever had, was building that business and getting it started, and like the actual leading up to grand opening day and grand opening were like the best time of my entire life. And then, fast forward 5 years, we've been open, we've been operating 363 days a year for almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in February. And that is very different from building something brand new. Operating it like wash, rinse, repeat, that's very different energy. That's very like maintaining the status quo type energy. And my Neptune and midheaven in Capricorn require that I build something new, that I continue to like, okay, so I got to this mountain. Now I got to get to this mountain. Now I got to get to this mountain. Now I got to get to this mountain. Like it's never ending. It's like you just got to figure out like where are the plateaus, where are your rest spots, like there's what's coming to me, which is weird because I don't think I've ever told this story before, but like it feels very Capricornian. There are people who perish trying to climb Mount Everest because they don't realize like the energy expenditure that's needed, because you can't stay at the top. You have to come back down before you can get to the next plateau. So it's like if you think that like I'm just going to push through it so I can get to the top, and then you get to the top and you have nothing left, you're not at an end point. You can't stay up there. And that's basically how goal setting works. It's like you don't get to live up there at like, oh, I met my goal. It's like, nope, you got to this plateau. You got to this end of phase one. And now it's like, okay, so now you're at the end of phase one. And now what are you going to do? And some people are the wash, rinse, repeat kind of people. They want to like do the routine and have the routine and do the same thing and have a recipe to work from. And we have plenty of those people inside of our stores doing that work. And it's very important. It doesn't work without those pieces. But there's also like a self awareness in I'm the builder. I'm not a manager, I'm a builder. And so a few months ago, in August of 2022, my cousin approached me again and said, we have been approached by the bank in this small town that's about 50 miles from where our first store is. The bank is wanting us to come there and put in a grocery store. The bank, it's like a public-private partnership is what it's called. They own some of the assets, we own some of the assets. So like they have some of the liability, we have some of the liability. So we're in it together. And that is, it makes it a lot easier, I can tell you that. So anyways, that's the offer, was like, do you want to be the ones who come in here and put a grocery store in this space? The person who did have the grocery store in that space, they were done doing it. They closed, they liquidated their stuff, but all the equipment is still there. And do you want to come in and take it over and remodel and put in your own grocery store in this space? And it was another instant hell yes moment of that sounds amazing. That sounds like such a good deal for us. And what an opportunity, what an incredible partnership to be able to be a part of and to bring our expertise and their backing, their support, and together, like we could create something extremely sustainable and valuable for this community that has just lost its grocery store, meaning they have to drive at least 20 miles to be able to get any kind of groceries that aren't, bought at a convenience store or gas station. So this opportunity popped up in August. And at that time, I did the Capricorn process of estimating like, okay, so we're going to put in a grocery store. That's the mountaintop that we want to get to. And okay, that's fair. And I want to go. Taurus, that's valuable. I do want to go. This is important to me. This is aligning with my personal values. I do desire to climb to the top of the mountain. But let me tell you this. I did the Virgo part and told him, we cannot do this. This is not feasible until we have another team member who will be the permanent store manager once we get open. So there was like this identification of this gap that like before we're ever even going to start climbing up the mountain, we will have this person on our team and they will come with us and we will all climb up that mountain together and we will summit grand opening day as a team and we will go into going forward. And that's really the whole thing of like, there was like, what even is the starting point of us being able to do this? What are the prerequisites in order to like, what are the resources that we need for this to be possible and successful? And my prerequisite was we need a store manager. We need somebody who's going to run it once it exists. That's not me. I'll build it, but we got to have somebody who will run it. So we just had that one conversation in August, and it was 2 months before he called me back and he said, I have 2 store manager candidates. I've selected my favorite, and I'd like to do a second interview with the whole team and this candidate, and let's just see what we think. And we did her interview. We basically hired her on the spot. And the next week we got started. So October 25th of 2022 was day one, where we all sat around one big conference table. There were people from the first store, there's her from the second store, there's those of us that are running the company that includes both stores. There's like all of us at this one table, and we're basically doing the thing where, okay, so the summit that we're trying to reach is to open a grocery store. So what does that look like? What does that mean? And what needs to happen before we're going to call it complete as far as we're ready to open? And then what things are we willing to leave for after opening? And we'll build those once we get open. And so that way we can go ahead and say, like, here's the end of phase one. What does the end of phase one mean? What does that mean? That we've reached the point where we're able to open. So we defined that obviously we need our food safety inspection. And to pass your food safety inspection, you've got to have all your refrigeration being able to be at the right temperature. We've obviously got to have groceries. So that means we've got to engage and get our tags hung up and get our POS set up so that we can sell the groceries with the cash registers at the front. We need the equipment, the forklift, the pallet jack in the back ready to go so that we can unload the inventory as it comes in. These are all pieces that if you don't have those things done, there's no possible way you can open. An example of the other kind is like, running a sale flyer every week. That's optional. It increases your sales to put up sale tags. Sale tags sell. That's just a fact. There's so many people who shop on those sale tags. And so that, though, that boost in revenue is nice to have. It's not critically important. So that is like one of the first things we're doing in phase 2. And that is really the concept that I want to paint a picture of as you receive this inspiration of this soul burning desire, this gigantic vision of, I want this to exist in the world. I want to be on that mountaintop. You can. You absolutely can get there. And some ability to decide what is necessary to get there and what can come later, and dividing it down into milestones that keep you energized and engaged rather than just saying, like, I want to be all the way up there, would look like, in my example, I want a profitable, well trained, operating like a well-oiled machine grocery store. That's what I want. And I'm willing to invest the next couple years probably into getting to the ultimate top of the mountain, which is a sustainably run grocery store. But I'm not going to jump right there. That's going to take 2 years. That's at least, right? Like a year of very solid training. And that second year will continue to be pretty intense as far as like just creating the structure to make sure that it's supporting itself, that all the things are rotating as they need to be and all the pieces are happening. So at this point, I have like 4 phases of this project, and that conversation back in August was like phase 0. It was like phase 0 of what are the prerequisites of like, how could we possibly get started with this? We need our store manager. Okay. So when we had our store manager, that's the end of phase 0 and the beginning of phase 1. So there's our milestone that marks the changeover between where are we at in this project. And then we get into phase 1, and phase 1 ends with grand opening, starting the cash flow. That is an urgent that is an urgent goal as far as like, in order to pay people, we really need to be selling the groceries. Like, we need to have an income if we're going to have all these expenses. So like, as soon as you can get to cash flow, the better. So we want to do that as fast as possible. And once we get a cash flow started, that's step number 1. That's the goal of phase 1, is to start the cash flow, get the doors opened. And once we have that, that's the end of phase 1 and the beginning of phase 2. So that's where we are right now. We opened on Wednesday. We opened that store in 6 weeks. And that's a feat that they told us, like, as we were going, pretty much all of our vendors, our POS people, the grocery warehouse, the grocery specialists that support us, like, they're all like, we've never seen this before. We've never, like, pretty much all of them just kept coming back to us with the story of like, that normally takes 4 weeks and they turned it around in 2 days. We've never seen that before. We just kept hearing it. And it's like, that's really cool. And oh gosh, it's so tempting. This is like part of the Capricorn shadow. It's like you get to the end of phase 1, right? Like, we worked our asses off for 6 weeks in order to get the doors open as fast as possible. And once we got there, I woke up on Thursday, right? We opened Wednesday. That was day 1 of phase 2. And then day 2 of phase 2, I woke up Thursday morning and I was still going like 100 miles an hour. I was doing the Capricorn shadow behavior of just keep climbing. It was the summiting Mount Everest. I was just going to keep climbing. I was just going to push on through. We got more stuff that we need to do. Like, there's a whole nother pile of things now that have to happen. And I was like, I'm just going to keep climbing. We just need to keep doing stuff. And I didn't even that lasted maybe an hour when I woke up, and it was then that I noticed, like, my whole self was, like, all t in a tense little ball, and I was like, "This feels like dog shit. This hurts." This, like, physically hurts to be thinking like this about continuing to run the way that we've been running. We've been going 100 miles an hour to meet this, like, 6-week deadline, and now we are on into phase 2, and I'm just, like, blowing right past any rest or, like, really thinking, like, being mindful of what even is the end point of phase 2. And the end point of phase 2 is a self-sufficient store manager. And phase 2 is, I think, roughly 4 months long. And so I can't go at 100 miles an hour after the last 6 weeks for the next 4 months. That's not possible. It doesn't balance out as far as my energetic resources. I don't have the resources I would need to do that plan. So I better chill the fuck out here at my plateau. I better just like coast a few days and like rest back up and get some sleep and eat some food and rebuild my strength, rebuild my energetic reserves. Let me chill on this plateau for a day, a couple days, like, Jesus, Carly, like, I just was like, "Okay, phase 1's over, phase 2." And that is so Capricorn shadow. That is, like, the shadow side, is that you will work yourself to death if you just leave yourself in Capricorn mode indefinitely. But that's also where that really supportive trine with Taurus is awesome news for all of us because Taurus gets hungry. Taurus gets sleepy. Taurus gets cranky. Taurus gets Taurus can make you very uncomfortable if you're not taking good enough care of yourself. And that is the balance between, yes, you want to keep climbing, but you also have to put the gas in your tank in order to have it to use to burn that fuel to apply to your goal. You have to put the gas in at the first place. So that is something that like within my own Capricorn energy, I am very, very mindful of right here, right now, in this moment, where today is the third day of business at that second store, and they have been open for 33 minutes. And I have been trying not to, but I've been practicing the other Capricorn shadow behavior of like believing that like I have to be in control and like I have to make all the decisions myself and I have to make sure it all happens and I have to like control it so that we can get to our goal. Like so tunnel vision on the goal that you lose track of like these are people. These are people on your team and like they're tired. Like they've been working their asses off for 6 weeks trying to get to this point and like how about instead of going in there and cracking the whip, how about you encourage them and congratulate them on what a good job they did and how successfully we completed phase 1. And of course, there's a phase 2. Of course, there's a phase 3 and a phase 4, but we'll get there. That'll come. And right now, we need to put the energy back in our coffers. We need to rebuild our strength and get some rest and get some sleep and catch up our dishes and catch up our laundry and catch up our whole house. All of us are just like we've been living and breathing and eating and sleeping this project for 6 weeks and that throws the balance off big time. And so the Taurus trine to this Capricorn new moon is such a blessing to take full advantage of as far as like, yes, you can keep climbing, keep putting one foot in front of the other as often as you have the energy to do that, but also realize that like your humanity is gonna need you to feed it and sleep it and water it. And if you don't do those things, you're going to be really sad when your vehicle craps out on you at like the worst possible moment. Capricorn will be devastated if it can't reach its mountaintop. That's all it wants. And it will never get there without the support of Taurus to feed it and water it and sleep it and all of that, and Virgo to pay attention to the details and those pieces like what are the tools that we need for this job? We need a store manager. the whole project is pointless without this one piece. So we don't even need to start climbing up the mountain until you can bring us a store manager to help us do this job. And so that's that Virgo side of evaluating like, okay, so if that's where you want to go, then here's the 4,000 steps that it's going to take you to get there. And like, here's a realistic expectation of like how long that's going to take. That's one of the pieces that I'm like proud of as far as my earth energy superpowers is like not only did I make it happen in 6 weeks, but I estimated at the beginning, I had no idea. I pulled this number totally out of my ass. I said it's going to take me 215 hours to build it. And that's assuming we have a full-time store manager who's like at least 40 hours a week. And it at the end of opening day, I had spent about 237 hours to build it over these 6 weeks. And I was like, how did I know? How did I know that that's how long it would take me? I don't know. But I did, and I was pretty close. And so now I'm estimating that there's 4 months for phase 1, and that's a very intensive training process that needs to happen. Phase 2 is slightly less intensive, but we'll continue on with the training process. And phase 4 is a very light version of the training process. So there's like still work to do and like a 2-year bigger picture kind of goal here that like, yeah, 2 years isn't forever, but like there's no way I can work at 100 miles an hour for 2 years. I need to come back down to a pace where I can keep doing this for the next 100 weeks, give or take. Um, Not 6, right? Like we can push for 6 weeks. That's very Aryan. That's the short burst of energy, Aries, to like create something new. Like we can really draw on that Aries energy to help get us started. But if your goal is your soul's true goal, it's probably way bigger than anything Aries energy is going to be able to sustain. It's going to take way longer. And so that's where that Capricorn energy plays in as far as like, how do you build up your own resources so that you can make it over that long haul of putting one foot in front of the other for the next 700 days or so. You know, like that's a lot of energy that's going to need to be expended. And it's not a big deal if you have a realistic sense of how long you're going to divide it out. Like, I'm estimating that I need to put about 500 hours into phase 2 and 3, the training. Um, and that sounds like a lot, but I'm doing it over a year. So it actually works out to about 15 hours a week. And so that's what I'm planning. I'm going to give it 15 hours a week and I'm going to do that for 52 weeks and I'm going to see where we are in a year, right? Like it adds up fast when you give it a reasonable amount, right? Like when we pace ourselves and we refill our gas tank every time we need to, and we rest ourselves every time we need to, you can go for a really long time. But if you neglect your vehicle, right? Like if you're not into the Taurus side of listening to your body and stopping when you need to stop and drawing a line in the sand that says, all right, there it is. My gas tank is empty. I need to go refill it. If you just blow right past that, I mean, eventually you run out of gas. And now you're stranded alongside the side of the road. And now it's like the part that, is really heartbreaking when that happens. Like it's in the heat of the moment and you really want to be able to perform to like help you the bigger picture, like get to where you want it to go. And now that's the time when you got to sideline yourself and now you're no help to the team and now the team has to work harder to pick up your slack. Like it just makes good sense, like, from my own Capricorn perspective, like, my vision for what it is that I'm trying to create is it's decades worth of stuff that I would really like to bring into existence, and there has to be a reality check, and it's very natural for Earth energy if that's all you're working with, but none of this exists in a vacuum. It's very realistic for Earth energy to be like, okay, so decades worth, no big deal. We're going to start here and then we're going to do this and then we're going to do this and that'll set us up to be able to do these pieces. And you just start working on it. And 5 years later, you're in a whole other spot. Like you can build it over time. That's kind of the only way to accomplish something massive is to exert yourself at a pace where you can keep doing it for years and years and years and years. Like, this isn't, necessary for everyone, but as far as like goal orientation and whatever, like I have no intention of ever retiring. I have no interest in retirement, like as most people experience it, as far as like stepping back from work and like having a personal life at that point. I have been very mindfully building a balance that includes a personal life and me building my dreams all at the same time. And I'll just keep doing that as long as I get to keep waking up on this planet. So, like, if our goals are informed by Pisces, our connection to source energy, our connection to unconditional love and the interconnectedness of all, the good of the all, like you can pour your heart and soul, you can pour your hours into something that will benefit hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions, if not billions of people. You can spend your time to do that. And no, you can't build it all at once, but you can build it if you're willing to chunk it down into one day's worth of effort and then come back tomorrow and then skip a day and then come back tomorrow. Like, if you just keep going, you will always get where you're headed. That's just the way it works in the earth realm. Is like, like the earth is round. Like if you just keep going, you will always wind up where you're trying to get to. And when it's informed by Pisces, when it's informed by Taurus, your sense of like what is important to you. And that's not to say like what's important to your culture, what's important to your parents, what's important to your boyfriend, what's important to your mentor. Like, I don't care about any of that. I care about what's important to you, your soul, that Jupiter and Aries fire burst that is coming through the collective that is saying, please create this. Please. There is a restlessness and an unfulfilled feeling that awaits anybody who ignores that passion. Unchanneled passion is not benign. Leaving it on the inside and not giving it proper expression is not benign. It backfires. Keeping it on the inside, it leads us to feel restless. It leads us to be harder on ourselves and heavier in our energy field. And it just sets us up for everything around us to be harder. And Aries energy, one of the main components that Capricorn and Aries definitely share is courage to go after what you want, to have the courage to say that, yeah, it's going to take me a couple years to get where I'm going, but I'm sure as shit going to start walking in that direction. I'm never going to get there if I don't start headed there. So let's go ahead and just take the one step. I know I can't do it. I can't do all 4,000 steps at once, but I can sure do one. And then once I do that one, I can probably do another. And maybe I can do like, couple hundred steps today or this week or whatever. The time is irrelevant. The direction is the point. And that's again kind of coming full circle back to like, why do you think you have the goal in the first place? Like I have a very clear idea of Capricorn and the purpose of these goals, I think because of Neptune being there for me, where it's like I'm not attached to meeting my goal. I am 100% having an experience along the way. Like the joy is in the journey. It absolutely is. It's not about the destination. You can't live on the top of Mount Everest. You got to come back down almost immediately. And yeah. So, like, are you enjoying the process? Because I hope so. The meeting of the goal is such a teeny tiny little part of the overall picture. And really, the joy is in the journey. The joy is in the creative freedom of getting to have an idea and execute it. Like, I got to tell you, one of my absolute favorite parts of this experience was, and again, this is the whole reason I'm telling you this is because it is not about the goal. It is about the experiences that you will have along the way. And so when we started the remodel, one of the things that like my business partner, he was like, I don't really think we need to remodel. It looks pretty good in there. And so like that's what he thought. And then I take a walk through the space and I was like, we need to paint, we need to pull down the department signs, we need to pull down the aisle signs and recreate all of those signs into something that is pretty. It's ugly in here, okay? Like that's my professional opinion. The bathroom also needs a complete overhaul. We need new floor, new trim, new paint, the toilet needs secured. Like, I had a whole list of stuff that needs to be done on the remodel, and we did every single bit of it, but my favorite part were the department signs. And so the department signs are the ones that say produce and meat market and dairy. And so these department signs. I I knew that we were gonna make them, and pretty quickly into the process, I had this, like, vision, this picture that popped in my head all at once, and I could see the finished signs. I could see exactly what they looked like. It wasn't like I had an idea of, like, "Well, maybe I could do it like this, and if I did that, then maybe I would wanna do this," and, like, kind of, like, figuring it out one piece at a time. It was not like that. It had, like, the whole entire picture, and what it was I'm gonna get rolls of peel and stick wallpaper in whatever pattern I want. I'm gonna have so much fun picking out wallpaper. I freaking love picking out wallpaper. I had no idea about that until I redid my office in 2020. Picking out wallpaper is like one of the funnest things ever. So cool. I'm gonna get some rolls of peel and stick wallpaper. I'm gonna get some tracing paper and I'm gonna stencil the signs that I have, or like trace the signs that I have at my first store, because all of these signs already exist at the first store where they already say produce, meat market, dairy. And I know enough about how those signs got made that spacing the letters so that they all look good, it's called kerning, to like make sure that you can't just say put the letters 2 inches apart, because wider letters need a smaller gap than skinnier letters. But, anyways, okay, so the spacing is not as straightforward as you would think. And I'm like, instead of having to like buy letter stencils, I'm gonna just trace the signs that we already have. I'll use an X-Acto knife and I'll cut out the whole word and I'll have a whole stencil of the whole word, not just individual letters. And then I can put my stencil on my wallpaper. I can trace inside my stencil, move the stencil, take my X-Acto knife and cut out the letters, and then take the piece of wallpaper itself that now has see-through, like, the word on it, and put that on the wall, and the wall color will be the color of the letters, will be that'll be the letters, will be just the wall showing through from behind. And around the outside of the piece of wallpaper, there was a wider trim board first, and then there was a little trim board on the very outside. And the inside one, well, we did yellow on the two sides, the longer sides of the building, and then we did like a dark brown on the back and the front wall. And so again, like this vision that I got of these department signs, it was like on the yellow walls, you're gonna do the outside skinny board is a dark trim, a really dark trim, and the inside board is a really light trim, kind of like the wood that's behind me. And on the dark wall, the brown wall, we're going to do the bigger inner board in a dark color and the smaller outer board in a light color, again, so it'll pop up against the color of the wall. And this is the picture that I got in my brain all like in an instant. And I was like, all right, so that's what we're going to do. So I tell this to Dolly and she's going to help me make them. She's going to like help do the trim for the outside and all of that. And so I'm telling you all of that so that you have a sense of the picture of like the process that I was undertaking, because I got this vision. This is my goal, right? Like as I'm summiting phase one, I'm trying to get the store open. There are lots of little summits along the way. And one of the pieces was department signs. We need to get the department signs hung up. And the inner decor in general. We need to do all of that. But these department signs. So, kind of one of the first steps was to get the tracing paper and to go to the first store and put the tracing paper over the existing signs and trace the letters. And I had told Dolly that I'm comfortable with doing that. So, like I'll just get a ladder and I'll get up there and it'll be fine. No big deal. And that was probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago in our process of our 6 weeks, right, leading up to opening. And we went to the store and she was with me. She was going to make sure that I got started okay. And she got up there first. She was going to help me kind of get the first one started. And I climbed up the 8 foot ladder, and the top of the 8 foot ladder is maybe this much above where the top of the coolers are. And I'm climbing up on top of the coolers so that I can trace this sign. Never been a big fan of heights. at all. And as I'm like getting chills as I even just picture how I felt climbing up that 8-foot ladder. And I like looked on top of the cooler and I looked at her and my entire face got hot and red, and my stomach felt like I was gonna throw up, and I just said, "I can't do this." And I climbed back down, and my whole body shook for, like, 10, 15 minutes with the fear that the adrenaline, the fear that had been triggered by climbing up there and looking at that. It wasn't so much like, "Oh my god, how am I gonna get up there?" But I was trying to picture, "How am I gonna get back down?" And I was like, "I can't do that." And so I climbed down. She traced all the signs for me, and I moved on with my life. I'm like, no big deal. Fast forward to Friday of this last week, so a week ago, and I get a picture from her. She has hung up the first the produce sign, which is one of the ones on the yellow wall. And with the way the wallpaper is, which I absolutely freaking love the wallpaper I chose, with the way the wallpaper is and the colors on it, the yellow wall basically blends into the wallpaper. Not exactly, but it's like not legible. It doesn't pop. It's not, it just blends together. And the effect is very underwhelming. And I was like, as soon as I saw that, I pretty much had the same feeling as when I was at the top of the ladder because I knew at that point, I have a choice, right, on how I wanna handle that. Again, it's not why do you have the goal, it's the process that's gonna unfold along the way. It's all of the little creative decisions that are gonna unfold along the way. So at that point, she sends me the picture, and she had hung up all 3 of the signs already, and as soon as I saw the picture, I knew what needs to happen is we need to paint a border on the letters. We need to paint, like, a white border around the letters so that there's a gap, there's a distance between the wallpaper and the letter, and then the color should be fine, and I was right, the borders are, like, gold. It actually looks amazing with the borders on there, but at that point, painting those borders, I'm like, those signs are already up there. And she spent roughly 6 or 7 hours hanging them up there. And so my options are face the fear and crawl up the 8-foot ladder and get up there and paint those borders on those signs, or scrap her 7 hours, which we're going to have to pay her for, have her spend more time to get the signs back down, and I can paint the borders on them on the floor. Then they'll have to dry before she could hang them back up. And there was also part of the, the illusion of the Maya, the restrictions, the parameters that I programmed into this game, where this is her second to last work day. So there was like this illusion of like there's just really not enough time for her to take them down and me paint them on the floor and let them dry and then her hang them back up and still install the trim boards around them at the end. So it felt very clear to me that the best path forward, the most reasonable, practical path forward is for me to get on top of the coolers, to climb up the ladder and get on the cooler and then have to get back down and just paint the borders on the letters with the signs already on the walls. And that's what I did. And that experience stands out to me because of the 4 weeks before when I climbed up a ladder in the same exact situation. I had the same exact thing going on where I need to get up here, and I tried and I decided I can't do this. And 4 weeks later, I climbed up on top of the ladder and I was starting to like panic and kind of start to feel that same feeling that I felt the first time 4 weeks ago. And right about then, somebody came up to me, "Hey, Carly, do you have a second? I have a question. I can't find the beats." And I'm like, "Oh, God, thank God." Yeah, and I like climb back down, like, "Okay, it's not right now. I don't have to climb up there right this minute. I'm gonna help her find the beats." And so it took like a few minutes and we finally found them. And so, okay, she knows where the beats are. Great. And then I go back to the ladder and I climb back up the ladder and I look at it. And in that moment, I decided that in this moment, it was very Taurus, very like grounded in the right here, right now. In this moment, I have nothing to fear because the only thing I'm scared of is the getting back down part. But in this moment, right here, right now, that's not what I'm doing. I'm getting up there. And I said, this comes out of Busting Loose from the Money Game by Robert Scheinfeld, but I was like looking at it and I felt this big swell of energy come through me. And I was like, I am the presence of power of God creating this and I can do anything. And I climbed up on the cooler. And I knew in that moment, like, I'm going to have to get back down and that's going to suck. But I'll cross that bridge when I get there. It was over an hour later before I had to worry about getting back down. And then I took my time and I had Dolly right there and she gave me her emotional support and I made it back down the ladder and it was okay. I survived. But like to see how, like, 4 weeks ago, oh, a sneezes. 4 weeks ago, I was presented with a challenge and I tried to rise to meet the challenge. I was very confident. I had every confidence. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to trace those. Like, no worries. I'll just climb up there. It's no big deal. And then I tried to rise to that challenge and I got right here and I was like, no, no, can't. And so, like, no, you do it. And Dolly got up there and she's very comfortable at heights and it was no big deal. But then a week ago, to get to see that, like, I am now presented with the same exact challenge and I didn't back down. I dug deep inside of myself to do something that I had previously thought I was not capable of doing. In that moment, I opened a doorway into a whole nother reality, literally. The fears that we have and the things where we hit that moment and we say, I can't do this, that's the limit of your reality, right? Like I climbed back down the ladder and I couldn't experience the reality of climbing up there and tracing the signs. Dolly had to live that reality because I wasn't capable. And then I get to this spot and I dug deep and it was in there, the ability to rise to that challenge. I rose and I showed myself in the process that I can do things even when I think I can't. If I dig a little deeper, if I want it bad enough, I'll climb on the cooler and I'll figure out the rest when I get there. Like, I haven't got that far in my life yet. I don't know about getting back down. Right now, I'm just on the cooler. That's my whole reality. It's so very Taurus. Like, that was the experience of being on the cooler. My hands, the very first couple minutes, like, my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even paint the borders on the letters. So I'm like, you got to calm down. Like, I was very firmly seated, kind of like sitting Indian style. And like behind me, there's a couple feet before like I'm gonna fall off the cooler or anything like that. So like you're not in danger. You're painting this line on this P. You see the P right in front of you, the paintbrush in your hand, the little foam brush, like this white paint, like this is your reality. This is your moment. Like this right here. This is all you're doing. The fact that you're sitting 8 feet in the air is completely irrelevant. Very Taurus, right here, right now, ground into my right here, right now reality, my five senses, this paintbrush, the smell of the paint, the freaking heat coming off the heater. Hey, Michelle, turn that off. Yeah, like just right here, right now. Don't even think about the part that's coming that you don't feel capable of until you're in it. And once I was in that moment of like, okay, I'm done up here, I really was like, I asked her, I was like, "Hey, do any of these look balanced? Do we need to stay up here and like paint a little bit more?" She's like, "Yeah, you could make that part a little wider and you could do this a little bit. And you didn't do this part yet." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I got to stay up there for like another 15 minutes and like prolong having to get back down on the ladder. And eventually my work up here is done and it is time to go back down the ladder. And at that point, I was already like, I had been sitting in my Taurus right here, right now bubble for like an hour, maybe a little bit longer up on that cooler. And I did the same thing. I was in the, not even the moment, I was in the second. I was inside this hand as I put it on right here, and then this hand as I put it on right here, and then my butt as I scooted it forward, and then this hand, and then this hand, and I scooted it forward again, and then this hand, and then this hand, and I scooted it forward again, and now my feet are dangling off the edge, and it's time to put this foot on this ladder, and then this foot on this ladder, and now I need to take this hand and grab this part. Like I would not let myself think any further ahead than the right here, right now moment of where I was. And I got down the ladder with Dolly's help. She's very sweet, very supportive. But yeah, it's like, it's not about the goal necessarily. It's very important to have one, in my opinion. It's important to me. I mean, I have a Capricorn midheaven, a Capricorn Neptune. Like, there's such a huge part of what I'm here to do that says, like, you're supposed to be setting really big goals. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll do that. And then working towards them. But I do believe that it is not about the goal itself. It is about the experiences that you have along the way. And in a very Capricornian sense, our self confidence is built up through those experiences. Like I tell you what, getting those borders painted on the signs, like where I was like working at heights for like 4 hours, living through that, those 4 hours was like Neptune and Capricorn. That was my spiritual development. That was me doing things that I did not think I was capable of. And now I also have the confidence that goes along with this expanded reality because I proved to myself that I could go the distance. I could do what it takes. And I didn't know that before. So it's not about, oh, great, we met our goal in 6 weeks and like, yay, us. It's like, look at how much growth, like in just those 4 hours, let alone the whole 6 weeks. There has been so much development in my appreciation for myself and my talents and my just what I'm here to do and the fun of all of that, that like really has very little to do with like ever actually getting to the summit you're aiming at, if that all makes sense. So that is my spiel on Capricorn new moon. I have just a little bit of stuff in the chat. Yeah, I'm just really, really grateful for all of you being here. I have had so much fun over these last 6 weeks. It did also give me the experience of feeling like I needed to like reprioritize a little bit, hence why I'm only doing these live streams every other week, to kind of make space for this other thing that I've been working on. So thank you so much for your understanding and support of that. Um, my next live stream will be in 2 weeks on December 23rd, which is actually on the Capricorn new moon. How cool is that? And we will be talking about the Cancer full moon that day, which will be a couple weeks after the Capricorn new moon. So, yeah, we will talk about the Cancer full moon next time on December 23rd. I will start at 10 a.m. Central Time if you would like to join. Otherwise, we also have this one's a little bit further out, but on January 7th, we have the last part of the book club. We have done the first 3 parts so far of The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. And the last and final piece, will be on January 7th. At 11 a.m. Central Time. If you would like to be there, we would love to have you. You can find the link for that in the meetup group. So, like RSVP to the meetup event, and the Zoom link is in there for you to be able to join. So that is all very exciting. And I have had so much fun doing that book club that I have decided I will continue to do the book club. So I have a new book picked out that we're going to start. Thank you, Fola, for putting that link. That'll get you into the meetup group and you can RSVP to whatever events you want from there. They're all completely free. But I've had so much fun with the book club that we are going to continue that. So we'll continue with a new book that I will announce once we get into January. And we'll keep going with the first Saturday of each month. We'll do like one chunk of the book and cover the book over many months. We did 4 months on this first book, and I think we're going to do 4 months on this next book too. And my goal with these book clubs is like these books that I'm picking, I have had radically profound experiences with and have found them to be incredibly helpful in a practical way in terms of like not just giving me ideas but like really the physical steps of like how do you actually do this, how do you actually be human and like have a good time doing that. I think the first book was very much like that, as is the second book. So the very, very practical guides that I'm finding and guidances that I'm finding within them, I'm so excited to be able to share through these book clubs that we do once a month. So if you have any interest in that whatsoever, definitely check it out. The next one, like Fola just put in the chat, is Paradise. And it is such a beautiful part of the book. I'm so excited to discuss it with you guys. I do believe that that is what we have coming up, other than one more thing to mention. We do a sacred circle through my Patreon on the fourth Tuesday of every month. And so this month, that'll be December 27th. So anybody who is a member of the Patreon or wants to become a member of the Patreon before then, our next sacred circle, which is basically just like an open discussion where we hang out and have spiritually based conversations on whatever kind of comes up at that time. Um, so the link to that Zoom is in the Patreon. And the Patreon does cost, it's a monthly subscription that you'll sign up for if you want. Um, but it's set at pay what feels good. So if you can afford $1 a month, sign up for $1 a month. If you can afford $100 a month, by all means, sign up for 100 a month. But if you want to be there, we want you to be there. Those conversations are so fun and so grounding and so affirming to get to spend some time each month with like-hearted souls in a safe space where we can talk about anything that we want. So, if that sounds like something that you're looking for, want to expand your community a little bit, we would love to have you in the Patreon or the book club, whatever makes sense for you. Thank you again for joining me, choosing to spend your time here with me. It is literally my honor and my pleasure to get to spend this time with you. And I am very much already looking forward to December 23rd, 2 weeks from today, when we will meet again. And until next time, I do hope that you take such good care of yourselves. And so will I. All right. Bye.